barbecue, flowers down the side, and veggies by the fence, all in Burke's backyard. Give me a home among the gum trees, with lots of plum trees, a dog or two and a barbecue, flowers down the side, and veggies by the fence, all in Burke's backyard. In Burke's backyard.
G'day, I'm Don Burke, and welcome to Do-It-Yourself Gardening, classic gardening makeovers from Burke's backyard. Over the years, we've had thousands of people write into us and say, can we have more details on some of the gardens that you've created or repaired or whatever, or even just irrigation systems that we've put in. So we've put this video together with everything you need to know, all of those wonderful gardens, from English cottage gardens through strange fantasy gardens, yes, putting in the irrigation system, and even through to Australian native gardens. And look at this. This might look like a marvellous bush scene, but in fact this is completely man-made. It is artificial. And in the video, yes, we do show you how to make a native fish pond. But now the video itself is divided into 4 sections. The first one is starting from scratch. It's inevitable that sooner or later you're going to face a garden where there's either nothing there or nothing there that you can use. And we're going to go through all of the bits you need to know to design a garden and to construct it. Then there's a second section, fixing up the crook bits. There's often awful bits in even the best gardens that need to be fixed. How do you do it? Well, those techniques are in that section. Then there's the finishing touch, when the garden is really good but just needs that something to add a little bit of distinctive difference about it, be it how to put in a special type of path or an irrigation system or whatever. And the last section is being different. If you've constructed gardens and you're very satisfied with the things you've done, but you're a bit bored, you want a challenge, you want to make a garden that is really creative and different, well then that is in the last section. Along the way you'll discover many, many techniques for creating wonderful effects, and you'll find that in fact those techniques are very simple indeed. Now also with the video by now you've probably noticed that you got a book. Now the book covers every single segment that's on the video. It gives you a complete design of all the gardens, listing of all the plants, contacts where you might need to get things, and also costing where it's appropriate to see how much money you might spend. Also there's details in the book of how you can use the timer on your video to locate any particular segment. But look, don't worry, if the timer remains a complete mystery to you, each segment as it starts on the video has the page number in the book noted, so you've got cross-referencing there. This is our production office for Burke's backyard, and in fact all of the makeovers that you see in this video were planned in that building in there. And one of the very first makeovers we ever did was our own front yard. And before we started on this area, it really did look truly awful. This fence really is a disgrace. We'll have to knock that down. And this funny looking thing here has got to go. You see, there's duplicate gas meters in there because in fact this was a semi, this house at one stage. And that's why you've got this awful piece of concrete here. It divided the garden in two. This sick pittosporum, well, it's finished. We'll get rid of that. This ugly garden here doesn't belong. There's cacti and cord lines, awful. And this is an old rubber tree. It must once have been an indoor plant, shoved out here. Look at these roots snaking out all over the lawn, under the house, and the inevitable has happened. The wall of the house has cracked. This tree has got to go. And why on earth have we got this grass here? You simply don't need grass in the front yard. You're not going to play cricket here. So that's it. Absolutely everything here has got to go. Rubber trees are easy enough to chop out. The main thing to watch out for is what's underneath. Don't let any of the branches fall on nearby cars or hapless passers-by. And observe safety in regard to yourself too. Make sure you got a decent pair of shoes on. Another minute or two and this will be a good rubber tree. One other point, by the way, do get one of your friends or the wife or the hubby or whatever to take a few pictures of what you're doing, because it'll be very rewarding later on when you create this wonderful thing if you can look back how dreadful it all was. don't trim the plant back too far. Leave a stump that's 1.5 metres to 2 metres tall, so you've got some leverage to remove it later on. Well, the thing now is to remove all this edging. Then the lot of the grass is going to go. And of course, eventually we'll finish up here with a total bare earth. Well, that's it. Everything's gone. All the plants, all that's left is just mud and dirt and filth. Now, what are we going to do with it? Well, it used to be just pretty for when the neighbours walk past, and that doesn't make much sense. Look, it's a tiny house on a tiny block of land. We need this space to live on. Wouldn't it be great to be able to have meals out here, a table and barbecue or whatever? What we need first, though, is a design. Now, this masterpiece here represents the house. And those are the windows. Important to know where they are. And this area is the front yard. Now, as we were saying, we'd like a nice circular area in the middle there where we can sit and eat. So you probably need a path coming in from the driveway here and out the other side. Now, we don't want people in the street watching us, do we? No, not when we're eating. So along the front here, we'll put a hedge. The idea of the hedge is simply to provide us with just that bit of privacy. So that's a hedge at the front. Now, what would be great here would maybe be a shade tree. Oh, hang on, that brings up, do we need shade? A compass isn't an expensive item, so you should manage to get one before you do any of this work. Well, it turns out north is out over there. That means east is out there. So this is fairly sunny, particularly sunny in the morning. So around about here, we'll put a nice big shade tree. Well, that should do for a tree. That's a Celtis australis. Now, you may well wonder, what's all this? Well, it's a good idea to have one of these skips around when you're going to clear out a yard like that, because you do finish up with a pretty big pile of debris, and that's this here. But anyway, it's all out, and we're now ready to make a start on the new garden. Well, the garden's come quite a way since last time we looked at it. You might remember the design we drew on the blackboard. Well, I took a little bit of time, drew it up on a white sheet of paper. Circle in the middle and the paths coming in either end. Now, this circle is starting to take shape. All of these edges are done with treated pine, Everlast treated pine edges, and these particular ones do form a very attractive garden edging. Now, for the paving material, we're using a very odd material. You may not know it. It's called decomposed granite. This is it. We've already compacted this area with a compacting machine. We'll compact the granite, water it in, and it becomes very attractive once it's set. These sort of vibrating compacting machines can be hired from your local equipment hire company, or if you're lucky enough to have somebody nearby with a tennis court, maybe you can borrow their roller. Now, the last thing is just give this a bit of a water to settle it in, and basically the paving is finished. The next thing to do is to get some plants in. Now, we want to put in that lily-pilly hedge right along the front here. Well, that's the lily-pilly hedge just about finished. These plants, Syzygium lemanii, planted at around about 5-foot centres. They'll join up to create a fair bit of privacy within about 6 months. Now, we've bought big ones here. These cost around about $80 each. Now, if you were sticking them in the ordinary garden, of course, you'd just buy 8-inch containers, which is going to cost you around about $10 per plant. We did this purely to give you an idea of the instant effect. Well, we've taken the bag off this huge tree that we bought. We're now sticking it in the ground. Now, one little tip when you're doing that is to run a hose into the hole. Even if you make a complete swamp out of it while you're planting it, that's fine. Now, we could have bought one of these trees, a Celtis australis, for maybe around about $20. But in fact, we paid $325 for this one that gives an absolutely instant effect. And there's the shade already falling where the table and chairs will go. You can see the level changes here quite clearly now. Path sloping down here, step down to the central area where the table will be, and a couple of easy steps down to the lower level. To define the edges of the paving, we've used this stuff. Now, you might say, rather bland, but this gives a wonderful definition to the edge of the path. And to save money, what we've done is to cut all of these root balls in half. This plant, by the way, is called mondo grass. And as you can see on that side, when it's put in the ground, it really does add a beautiful definition to this design. Now the sun's moved over the back of the house. This is more the shady side of the garden. So through here, white impatiens. This whole garden, by the way, is white. White Sasanqua camellias and white flowering dietes, which is effectively, if you like, an iris-like flower. Also on this side, towards the top there, we've got lots of different varieties of gardenias to provide that wonderful perfume that'll come up through the windows. This, as I said, is slightly more shaded. Out here where the sun hits almost all day, we've got daisies. Ordinary white marguerite daisies and dwarf marguerite daisies here, and over here, the little white flowering erigeron daisy. Now, it's time to get them in the ground. Well, the job's almost finished now, just a matter of just watering the surface of this granite to highlight the colours, really. It'll just settle it in and the colours will come up rather nicely. Now, you may well ask at this stage, what did it cost? Well, I've got all the costings here, and I must say, it's a fairly good price. The wood and nails and all that sort of stuff came to $194. Now, the garden soil, the mulch, and this stuff that I'm hosing, the decomposed granite, that all came to $400, including delivery. So the total for all that, for a budget job, including plants, $998, is $1,592.60. So for less than $1,600, you could buy ordinary-sized plants at your local nursery and do this job. If you want to do it with these huge plants that we've picked, where you're going certainly for a size that's a little bit beyond what most people would pick, all up, this job, and for us, has cost $2,745.10. But there is still one thing missing. That's it, the table and chairs. Now, I think the whole effect here is rather beaut, and when you think of it, this is an extremely usable area. The cost for that budget version, around about $1,600. If you bought this, if you didn't have one on hand, about $600 for a Jarrah setting, so $2,200 all up to add what amounts to a couple of extra rooms on the house. And it is fabulous, isn't it? This is the job 4 years and 4 months later. You might notice that the deciduous tree at the moment has no leaves on it because it's winter. That means you can see me, but also it means the sun can just stream in here, and in winter this is a really lovely place to be, sit, have a meal or whatever. But the key fact that you might notice is that the hedge out the front here now gives you complete privacy from the street. It's about 3 metres tall, and really you have got a very private room indeed. And that privacy really matters because out there in the street is where all the cars park. Now, even though this is essentially an office building, the staff come out here almost every day and have their lunch. But now, so much for putting a new garden in front of an old house. We're now going to look at putting a new garden right in the middle of a new housing estate. Probably the most difficult thing in all of gardening is what do you do with a new home, particularly with the front yard. Now here we've got a new housing estate, and you can see they've tucked a lot of plants willy-nilly into most of the front yards. Do you put in things like crocus palms? When you think of it, that crocus palm in a few years' time is going to look exactly like this. Nothing much at ground level. The lowest foliage will be up 30 or 40 feet in the air. Do you go down to your local nursery to look at what plants appeal to you? How do you begin the whole process? Well, you don't begin the process by thinking about plants. The first thing you've got to think about is the design of the garden. Now we have one here. They've used black concrete, bush rock, volcanic scoria. Now you may like all these colour combinations and the way it works with the house. But what we're going to look at now is how to design something that is very functional in the front yard. Well, we've selected this house as fairly typical of any house in this estate. And they've already started to put in the beginnings of their garden, and they've had a bit of fun doing it, and it's not a bad job. But there's a lot we can learn from what they've done. The first bit we should look at is this garden along the front. Now, it's about 2 feet wide or 600 millimetres. Look, that's not wide enough. It needs to come right out to here. The other thing is we've got the old Sydney shark's tooth pattern of sandstone along the front of it. No edge for the mower, so it's got a real maintenance problem here, so we will need to change that. Also, we've got a grevillea that's been shoved in the lawn. Now, when you shove trees or shrubs in the lawn, they never do very well at all. grevilleas particularly suffer badly because when you put your lawn food on, it poisons them. But the, well, feature of this front yard is this thing, the little coming together of parts of the tap, the water meter and the dirty great big electricity knob. We can do a little better than this. The design we've chosen gives a degree of privacy but also a bit of a view to the street. See, that's the main bedroom there, and you've got a second bedroom there, so you do need some plants here so that, well, the people walking past don't get a bit of a show on Saturday night. Now, how are we going to do it? Well, we're going to actually set the garden out with the hose so we can see what we're doing. We may like what we've got, or we may not. Now, the idea with all this is just to try things. We're not going to get this right the first time we try it. But these bits, though, this is probably going to be lawn here. That's garden there. So I'll keep trying. We've got a spur of land here. So we'll try and include that. Now that I'm happy with where the hose goes, I'm marking out the line with a bit of ordinary garden lime so that when I take the hose away, I can still work out what's what. Now, in case you're confused, we've got garden bed against the house. This is a little strip of lawn through here, which sadly means, by the way, this grevillea goes, but it was going to die anyway. We'll grass over that. And we've got a garden bed through here, and then, of course, more lawn out there towards the street. After that, we sprayed the grass that was eventually going to be garden with Zero. And when the grass was dead, we put a special organic mix on top. This particular mix consisted of gypsum, composted material and sand. And then we rotary hoed it all in. And now, with the soil all fluffed up and the garden edge in place, we were ready to begin planting. To begin with, I'm going to try placing the larger plants. They're sort of small trees, I suppose. This one is a wattle, a Queensland wattle. The idea is we need a little bit of height, so it'll go up in this top corner. It'll go somewhere about here. Now, I didn't mention what we did with the garden edging. It's done in brick, which matches the paving around the house. Now, we first of all set out the curves with some actual electrical conduit, laid down some concrete mix, and then put the bricks on top of that. And you might note that we've actually filled all the gaps, particularly where the bricks open up, with a nice stiff sand cement mix so that when you do the edging, you don't jam the edging machine. Also, we filled the hole where, of course, the poor grevillea and so on used to be. We got some grass that we removed from there, put it in here, and away we went. Now, lastly, we're putting this one here. This is a grevillea Ivanhoe, which will grow almost to roof height there and give nice fill between the windows. You might note that when we improved the soil here and built the garden bed up a bit, we didn't build it up next to the house because there's the damp course just along at this level here. And if you look, you'll see that there's the mortar missing between some of the bricks above that. That's to give ventilation under the house. If we put soil up above the damp course, you get damp rising up this wall. And if it goes up above those gaps where the bricks breathe, that gives termites, or if you like, white ants, a chance to crawl in there and eat the house apart. So never bury the wall of your house. Anyway, enough gas bagging, time to put in some more plants. Well, this is the last one of the plants. Now, this is a grevillea obtusifolia. It's actually technically now Thelmaniana if you're a purist. But what we've done is to mix bottle brush, grevilleas, and some kangaroo paws, all bird attracting, because the people that own this place, a couple of battlers, Kevin and Heather, they wanted to attract native birds to the garden. Plants are low over there and they come up tall over here, but yeah, I shouldn't stand around. I should start putting them in the ground. I'll get the spade. Well, all the plants are in. What I'm doing now is giving them a bit of a drink prior to mulching, because if I water down through the mulch when we put it on, it's a bit raw. There might be a lot of sort of toxic resinous material will come through it, so give them a drink first. Well, this is the enjoyable part of the process, just spreading the mulch around, nice light work. Now, the mulch we're putting on about 3 to 4 inches thick, 75 to 100 millimetres, if you think in those measurements. Very important not to bury the base of any plant. If you bury the roots, they'll probably die. So just when you put your mulch around, run around them like that and spread it out. Now, we've spent about $800 on this front yard, but then again, there's an entire front yard. Half of that money approximately is in plants, and the other half was in materials, cement and bricks and so on. We've added certainly a lot more than $800 to the value of the home by doing it. And also remember, we'll achieve some privacy here so that when you're in the house there, you don't feel that everybody driving by is watching whatever you're doing. So think about it, this is easy to do. There's nothing here that any average home handy person couldn't do. So remember, this is what the garden looked like before we began. And this is what it looked like at the end of the process. And here we are 9 months later. Now that's not very long, but notice how good the garden is. We've come close to creating an instant garden. And the wattle tree here not only is already quite large, but it's already in flower. But now we're going to look at one of those classic problems. What do you plant underneath a gum tree? The people who own this area want to put in an English cottage-style garden in here. Now, as a bonus to doing all this, we've dug up a few rocks, so they look rather nice. But we've got a budget of around about $800. Well, yes, we can do it for that. But the first thing we've got to do is bring in a bit of soil, because all that we've got here is the clay subsoil dug up in the process of making the drive. It's amazing in the course of building just how much rubble accumulates around an area. And it's very important before you do anything else to rake up and remove all of that rubble. The next thing is we're bringing in soil. You can't put too much soil around the base of a tree or you'll kill it. But we've brought in about 5 tons of soil for this area. And of course we're having it deposited in 3 different piles so that the spreading is not too difficult. By the way, always put it uphill where you want it eventually to finish up. Then it's not too difficult to start shoveling the soil and sculpting it in the various areas around the rocks and the trees. The tree in the centre here is a Eucalyptus scaparia, or Wollongara white gum. Fabulous thing for a centrepiece. Now what we've done is to sculpt the soil around here to make it look interesting, and I think it does, but also of course this is fairly steeply sloping and the sculpted soil tends to inhibit erosion. Lastly, sweep off your rocks. Well, we've placed most of the plants in position in their pots and we're having a bit of a look. Around the rocks, it's always interesting to put reedy things like this. They just sort of look natural. It's a matter now of standing back and having a bit of a look. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. We've colour coordinated all the plants. I think it's now time to shove them in the ground. When you're putting the plants in the ground, particularly in a situation like this, where the ground's been compacted by builders and their equipment, very important to dig a large hole and loosen the soil up. Well, we're now ready to put in our centrepiece of the whole display. It's a red variety of Japanese maple. Now, it's worth around the $100 mark, but really, something nice like that will always just add that touch of class to what we've got here. Let's hope it's going to come out of its pot easily. This, of course, is a dissectum variety. Beautiful things, dissectum maple. They're better in the cooler areas of Australia than the tropics. Now, we've got to get this facing. Oh, in fact, I think that's all right. That's fine. So it's just a matter of getting it nice and upright and filling the hole. The next thing to do is to mulch. Well, that's the job completed. We've used eucalyptus mulch to cover the soil, and I think you'd agree that the whole effect looks reasonably good. Now, be warned, cottage gardens are lovely, but they're high maintenance, probably one of the highest maintenance of all types. Many of these plants will live for 1 to 3 years. They require pruning through that time, and then you would have to replace them. Now, we've come in on budget. You do all of this for $800. It would take 2 people about 2 days to do all of this work. Now, I also mentioned that we were colour coordinated. What have we done? Well, it's very simple. We've mixed purple, pink, blue and white flowering plants. And the white is important because it complements the exquisite trunk of the white gum tree. Just about everyone on Earth would love to have a beautiful, lush green lawn, but Many of us finish up cohabitating with a mess like this, weeds and half-dead grass and all the rest of it. Well, if you're in the warmer areas of Australia, I wouldn't do a lot right now. But in the cooler zones, particularly areas like Tassie and Melbourne and so on, now is the time to look at fixing this sort of a problem. In other words, laying a new lawn. The first thing to do is to get rid of the weeds. You could spray them all with Roundup and wait 2 or 3 weeks, or you can spray them with a selective herbicide like Weed Ben M or Bin Dye just to kill the broadleaf weeds. It's a good idea to dig a little hole in the lawn to see what's down there. Now, we found some lumps of all sorts of materials, brick and goodness knows what. Also, we tested the pH, and it was around about 8.5. The next step is to rotary hoe the ground to churn it up. You can hire a machine like this from your local equipment hire company, and don't forget to pick around the edges so that it's all turned over. Now rake out all of the weeds and the rubble that the rotary hoe digs up. Barrow in your fresh soil, and we're lucky here. The fresh soil's got a pH of 5.5, so the two mixed together means we'll come up with something fairly good for growing grass on. The next step is to re-hoe it all, to churn the two sorts of soils together. Then we lightly rolled it with a roller that you can hire, again from your local equipment hire company. It's just filled up with water. Then a lawn leveller will finish the job off nicely. The next step, of course, is to actually sow the grass seed. Now, do read the instructions first, but basically you walk along, carefully spreading it in one direction. Then when you finish doing your entire lawn in that direction, you go back and lay the other half of it at right angles. In other words, come back and redo it in this direction. Then it's lightly raked. You can apply some lawn fertiliser, but a starter fertiliser, and then the whole lot is watered in. Now make sure when you're watering it in that the hose is on a very fine jet, and keep it moist for certainly 2 to 3 weeks until the grass has got a nice green cover, because if it dries out in that period, you'll lose it. Now, if you're going to all this trouble, for goodness sakes, buy some decent lawn seed. Don't put in rubbish. There are some lovely varieties around. Waterless is a beauty in that it does require less water, and I suppose varieties like Mow-less would be a prestige one. But get the good stuff. Here's how it looked a couple of months later, and doesn't it look stunning? But sometimes a lawn in the front yard simply doesn't make sense. These are typical front yards of Australian terrace houses, and some of them are quite pretty and so on. But when you look at this sort of a front yard, really in a way it's a bit silly, because it's all grass. Now, it's not big enough to play football on, and I'm not going to lie here to get a suntan because the footpath is right there and everyone's going to look at me. So this does really need to be, I think, a garden. So let's look at how we can redesign something like this. To work out the design properly, it's a great help if you can get a bit of height, and that's where the good cherry picker is a fantastic aid. Now, looking down on the garden, let's see what we'd do. Well, a few stepping stones, I think, through the garden so we can walk through it would help. Then some native shrubs around the front of the house. Perhaps a tree, in this case a wattle tree in the corner near the front fence, and some more shrubs around there. Then for much of the rest of the area, I think some ground covering Australian native plants would be very good. Lastly, just as a touch of class, what about a nice round water feature smack dab in the middle? Well, that's enough gas bagging. It's now time to get to work. Now, you might note that there's the remains of an old garden edge here that goes back some years. This could be a bit of a challenge to get out. Oh, yes, this is a bit like the Great Wall of China, I think. Oh, it'll eventually come. It's only the first one that's difficult, the rest of it's easy. The next step is to remove this grass. Now, unfortunately, being an old garden, as we dig up this grass, it's just riddled with onion weed. You can't remove onion weed by hand, no matter what your next door neighbour's told you, it doesn't work. So what we'll do is we'll mulch all this, and although I don't like using chemicals, the odd bit of onion weed that comes through later on we'll spray with Zero or Roundup. Well, the next stage is to put botany humus all over the top. We're going to dig this in now. This is a product that's available in New South Wales. It's just bulk compost, and there should be something available from your local landscape supplier near you. One little warning, over there is something I discovered while I was digging. Remember, you must always assume that the coaxial cable from Perth to Adelaide runs through your block. Here's a buried PMG box, which means if I dug carelessly around here, we'd have no phone for a day. Always be careful. The soil here is extremely sandy, and the organic matter will make it work much better, and it'll increase the earthworms and all the rest of it. But if the soil were clay, this addition of organic matter would work just as well. The next step is to put in the water feature. Now, we've used a reasonably large, about 1 metre diameter terracotta dish. This cost around $600, but you could get a pipe section for maybe $100 and concrete the bottom, get a cheaper pot for that matter, or you could concrete this yourself for probably around about $50 or less. By the way, you'd line it then with black plastic. We filled the holes here with Sally's Quickcrete, so because this is a pot, it's not actually a proper dish, and then we coated the outside of it, because we're going to put living plants on the inside, with shower plug. Now, shower plug's about $40 for enough to do this, and about $10 for the Quickcrete. Getting your water feature absolutely level is quite critical, otherwise the water will always sort of drip out one side. Because it's got a rounded, rather voluptuous shape, what we're doing is levelling the soil such that it's high on one side and low on the other. The stuff we've taken out of the holes I've just thrown here, and I'll try and sculpt that into a couple of little hills. I've got a bit of tinkering now, but the next thing is the path. Well, I've put in a rough placement of our stepping stones, but the problem with this circle in the middle is that if everything's too symmetrical, it'll look tizzy and silly. So what I'm trying to do now is just make this a little bit asymmetrical. Yeah, that's nice. We've got a couple of things to do now. We've got to dig these stepping stones into the ground, then we've got to start to put some plants around. Well, now we come to what is by far the best bit of it, that's sticking the plants in the ground. We're sort of doing an old-fashioned cottage garden look, but with new Australian native plants. These silvery things I'm putting in, they're flannel flowers, gorgeous white flowers, silvery foliage. We're using white bottle brush, it's called Anzac, some correas. The main ground cover here is Myoporum, again white flowers. The grassy-looking thing, Lamandra, beautiful plant. Pink things are Zairas, and towards the back there we've got some tea tree, Leptospermum flavescens, cardwell, and there's a large wattle here which will form, I suppose, the centrepiece of the garden. What remains now is to mulch this garden. We're choosing, of course, leaf mulch, and lastly to water everything in. Well, this still is the best part of gardening, standing around on the end of a hose. Soil's sandy. I've been watering for well over an hour now, and it's just starting to get about right. Hour and a half to soak a garden like this. Well, basically, that's the job. See what you think of it. Remember, when we started, it was just lawn and horrible. That's what it was. And this is the end result, a stone path wandering through it that looks, I think, quite attractive. Lovely water feature in the middle. And you've got all of these native plants. And this is important. All of these native plants will need to be trimmed and kept into lovely little prissy shapes so that we get the cottage garden effect. But you can do cottage gardens in your front yard with native plants, and this is much more practical than the old lawn. But this is it today, but nothing is ever perfect in life. We've let it go, it's been watered and that, but there's been a few problems. Now, you might note here that you've got one of the flannel flowers, and look at that. That's got root rot or something. Your best bet when you get that is simply to remove it. You can see root rot. The roots have rotted right off. Now, the same, this is a correa back here. Correas are brilliant in Melbourne and perhaps inland, but in more humid areas, they're not much good. Look at that, there's not a lot of roots on that. It's got dieback on the tips. It's got root rot too, so we will remove that. There's no point in pressing on with something that's unhappy. Now, other than that, you might notice that some of these plants here are swamping others. There's your little flannel flower. So it's a good idea, just with the old sheep crutches or whatever, just to come in through here, just to give this a little bit of definition. But now it's time to look at what's going on around the back of the house. What do you do when you've got a boring, ugly backyard like this one, just all sort of paving bricks, and it's tiny, it's the backyard of a little terrace house? Well, the people who owned this one did something quite marvellous. Firstly, they put in 2 brick containers about halfway down the backyard. Then they did some wonderful tricks with paving. They used ordinary concrete slabs bordered by red paving bricks. Then they put up just a small pergola or pergola about halfway along the backyard. And this is the finished job. You've got a lovely room here at the front with some lattice and all the rest of it, and it's a real heat trap, this one. So in the middle of winter you could have your dinner here or whatever, and it would be fantastic. A little bit hot in summer though. Now they've built up this layer at the back. Remember, all this used to be just gently sloping. And in this slightly higher area, we've got the wonderful shade under this liquid amber. So you could have a beautiful meal here in the middle of summer. This is a really pretty room for summer and a very functional one. Now, if you think it's a little bit bare, you might note this whole garden is only about 3.5 months old. And there are lots of little plants. They're going to green it up a lot yet. There's a cissus, and that will cover the fence. This will be almost like a little rainforest in time. But the incredible thing about all this is a very cheap design, done by Rob Cowan, by the way, and we've added 2 wonderfully livable rooms to a tiny little terrace house. There are many plants with truly horrible names, but probably none worse than this one. This is Viburnum plicatum variety, or var tomentosum. Dreadful name, isn't it? For rather a lovely plant. It belongs to the viburnum group, obviously, which are the snowball trees, although they're shrubs, not trees. It's getting confusing, isn't it? But it's a beaut thing. It has creamy white flowers with this sort of halo of larger flowers on the outside and the actual true flowers, the fertile flowers, on the inside. The bush grows around about the height you can see here, probably not much over about 3 metres, not much over about 9 feet or so. Has this layered effect. And the viburnums are fairly hardy. It's still best in cooler areas, but will still grow well in the better gardening areas of Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, and so on. I don't think you'd grow it very well in Brisbane. But that name, do you remember it? Yeah, I'm sorry, it's awful, isn't it? Viburnum plicatum var tomentosum. Well, we've all got them. Those funny, ugly-looking areas in the garden where the plants are half dead or somehow it just doesn't look right. So the next section now, we'll look at those problems and how to fix them. This is your classic side passage. Look at this. Privets growing, just about every weed known to man. This is not a weed though, this is a locust tree. It's a huge one, it's more of a hicot. But what it's done is to jack up all of this paving, so we'll have to redo the paving. Now this is a little date palm. And frankly, that's a spiny, horrible thing. That's got to go. It can't exist in this area. And this hibiscus is not too good. Now, possibly to find out why, you look at your compass. Yeah, there you are. North is directly out there. This is a southern area. It's shady. You're not going to grow a hibiscus. So you're going to rip that out, throw it away. Now this is a silky oak, presumably a seedling from the one out in the street. There's a few of these. We'll get rid of all of these. But the first thing to do is to fix up that crook path. It's probably best to remove the bricks with something like a mattock because they can be jammed in very tightly, particularly when there's tree roots growing in and around them. It's necessary to clean the bricks as you go, otherwise you're simply not going to be able to relay them. Now, the next thing that we've uncovered here, apart from, by the way, there's your sewer line. When you're doing something like this, boys, no macho stuff. If you're going to do the macho stuff, you're going to have to pay a plumber to come in and repair the sewer. Nice and gentle. Now this root here is not a major root on the tree, and I think we can remove that. Whereas there's a larger root along here, which I think we might be forced to work around, mainly because I don't want the tree to fall over on the house. But let's remove this nuisance root here. The path should be excavated to at least 2 or 3 centimetres, perhaps an inch or so, below the level of the bottom of the bricks. Then you spread sand Could be river sand, but probably any sort of sand would do, ready to lay the bricks. In laying the bricks, we've made a slight hump in the path near the base of the tree, but there's no hump as you grade down towards the steps, otherwise you'd have a drainage problem. After the bricks have been laid, you spread more of the sand on top of them, sweep it with a broom, and then hose it in thoroughly so that the bricks are locked into position. A final sweep then is all you need to complete the job. Now, for the fun bit, we get to remove all these awful weeds. Well, it's now time to bring in some plants. Now let's look at what's here. Already here is a nandina. That's fine, we'll keep that. It's a beaut thing. This fishbone fern, I think we might get rid of that. It does tend to take over. We'll put in nicer ferns, like these maidenhairs. Another nandina here, which is fine. And this is a little Sasanqua camellia, which is well suited to this area. The next thing is to now try some dry placements, the old put and look method. In addition to the plants already mentioned, we use the old-fashioned ginger, which is perfumed and very vertical in its growth habit, as is the bamboo palm, which is not a bamboo, it's a lovely dwarf palm. And a number of terrace ferns. All of the terrace ferns are quite attractive plants. We use some holly ferns, which again are very tough and will take a bit more sun than many ferns. On the fence as a climber, we used Cissus ellendanica, normally grown as an indoor plant. Another good old standby we used was the variegated aspidistra. And we also used two different varieties of ardisia, one with red berries, the other with white. Well, all the foliage is in and it does look reasonably good, but the question is now we need some colour. Now the first thing is, look at the colour of the house. It's a light blue, so pinks will work particularly well with it. Now one of the things that you might note, I've got a pink azalea here. They don't like heavy shade here, so I'll put it more towards the front where it gets extra light. And then these other things, this is a dwarf balsam. It won't grow much bigger than about that. These are absolutely fantastic plants. Just a matter now of getting everything into the ground. The next thing to do is to mulch all of the areas of the garden. We've actually used a sort of a wood chip and leaf litter here, which is very effective. That is a pink camellia that we put in too, which I think is a nice final touch. Water everything in copiously, most important. And I should mention, by the way, the majority of these plants here are for a frost-free position. Wouldn't be much good if we put these in if you got snow. What is the world's best climbing rose? Well, I suppose the answer to that is who knows, but one of the contenders for the world's best climbing rose would be this one. This is the yellow flowering form of the Banksia rose. Now the Banksia rose has some wonderful things about it. Firstly, you can put your hand in there, pull it out, and it's okay. There's no significant thorns. It retains its foliage for most of the year in most areas. Very attractive plant. There's a white flowering form as well as this yellow flowering form. It is perfumed, and it's a very, very easy climber to use. So the name again, it's a Banksia rose, and this is the yellow form of it.
It's bad, Don. I've been here for 5 years, and I have not been able to grow anything in this garden.
It does look pretty grim, actually.
Grim, I have just about got to the point where I'm going to plant plastic flowers because nothing grows here.
Not even the weeds?
No, no weeds.
Well, what do you reckon? Do you reckon we can do anything with it?
I'm sceptical. I have to admit, I think I'm a pretty good gardener. I mean, I water things and I fertilise them, and I have just never been able to get anything to grow here.
All right,
I don't know what the problem is.
I think we're prepared. We'll take on the challenge and see what we can do with it.
Well, I'd be really happy if you could do it.
Okay. Now, I'll tell you what we can see so far. This really is a massive problem. There's this huge pine tree out the front here, and it's got these roots in under here, and they're just sucking up everything. Fertiliser, water, the lot. So the conditions are really grim. The other thing is it looks like this soil not only is very poor quality stuff. I mean, if you look at it's dusty looking rubbish. This is just alluvial rubbish, but it looks to be very shallow. So the first thing we've now got to do is dig all of this soil out and just see what's down here, because we're not going to use this soil for a start. Well, it's pretty much as I thought. Wherever you look here, there's tree roots. They're right through the soil, and they're just removing any moisture or any fertiliser in this. It's obvious that nothing could grow here when it's like this. Well, we've removed most of the soil and chipped away a lot of the concrete here, so now the new plants that we put in will be able to grow really well. We're going to put much better soil in, obviously. But the main problem here is that this area is too dry. The tree roots will grow back in. What do you do about it? Well, we've got to run an irrigation system along here. So we've bought ourselves a kit and we've dug a trench all the way along here. Fortunately, the tap is not too far away. There it is there. Now, we've got the problem here that there's a concrete path. Now, we could smash the path and have a horrible mark across the path forever where we repair it, but there is a better way, and it's fairly straightforward. It's just a matter of finding an old length of galvanised water pipe, lining it up as to where it's got to go, and then tapping it through under the path with a sledgehammer. There we go. Now, the next bit is we've got to poke the irrigation pipe through. There's a trap here. You've got to straighten the irrigation pipe out because it comes in a coil. We've had it in the sun for a while, and hopefully now this is straight enough to go through the hole. You might notice that this is a much smaller diameter than the water pipe, so it, by rights, if it's reasonably straight, should go through the hole with the greatest of ease. I think we might be through. Yep. We're through and out the other side. Now we get to play Lego, grown-up Lego. Well, we've put a T-joint on the end of the pipe that comes through under the path here, taken one line up to the end of the garden, and we've bandicooted through underneath the rocks here because you don't want to break the old rockery. And hopefully I can thread this irrigation pipe all the way through the rockery and out the other end. Now, we might be lucky or we might not. So far, so good. And you can see again, bandicooted under there and up and out the other side. Now, that brings me to the next bit of the garden, which we haven't really talked about yet. There's a little bit more soil here. In fact, you can see there's a fairly large lemon-scented tea tree. But look, this area is really not too good. I love lemon-scented tea trees, but it's got to go because we've got a strong orangey red brick house, and this house says, hey, look at me, which is fine, but just can't put a lot of brightly coloured things around it, or we've not scruffy things either. So the golden diosma's got to go. I love gardenias, but we'll move that round the back. We'll clear this all out, ready for replanting. Well, we've used all the soil that we removed from that garden bed to level up the lawn here. Just got in a few rolls of turf so that we're not going to leave an awful mess. And hopefully by the end, the whole job will look rather good. Now, the next thing is, what sort of plants do we put in the garden? And that's them over there. You'll notice we've got things like the large Nandina domestica, the Japanese sacred bamboo, some prostrate conifers, Juniperus conferta, and the odd other dwarf conifer like a dwarf cryptomeria, and of course a big Japanese maple. What we're trying to do is to fit in with this wonderful, sedate, very civilised and somewhat disciplined look of large conifers around the front of the house. And the beaut thing about them is they don't fight with the red bricks. Well, this is the big moment when we turn the sprinkler system on and see whether everything works. Hallelujah, it does. These sprinkler systems, by the way, are very, very easy to put in, and I do recommend that you think about them, particularly in dry spots like this. Now let's look at what we did here. This is what the garden looked like originally. Pretty awful, with nothing growing in it. What we then did was to remove the awful soil and get rid of some of the concrete and so on, and then we put an irrigation system through it because it was simply too dry because of the large tree nearby. Then we put in our soil, our plant, and we have actually mulched it with composted pine bark fines. And the end result, well, I think it's rather good. Come along, have a look. Lovely, quiet plants, as I said, because the bricks, they're nice bricks, but they're loud bricks, so a quiet garden, virtually nothing that flowers in the sense most people would think of it. And there you are. But I suppose we've now got to face the critical issue. Helen, the homeowner, does she like it or loathe it? Well, there you are. What do you think?
Oh, wow. That's great.
Do you like that?
That's fantastic.
Do you know what the best thing about it is? That's a job for one person for one day. One person a day would do that, as you basically noticed.
Yeah, you've been working all day.
Yeah. And $300 is all it would cost the average person. But for you...
It's just a kiss.
It's yours.
Oh, it's great. It's fantastic. I love it.
There's no doubt that one of the best of all of the Australian native plants is this one here. This is Hardenbergia violacea. Now, the normal form of this one that's sold in nurseries throughout Australia, and the rage plant, I suppose, is one called Happy Wanderer. But there are many forms of this plant. There are dwarf forms like that mini ha-ha. It can flower white or pink as well as the purple. And the fantastic thing about this plant is it can be used either as a climber or, as we've got it here, as a ground cover. It will just spill over. Now, you might say, I'm not into native plants, I've got a cottage garden. But just think about it. This plant could be an absolute asset to any old-fashioned cottage garden. It's got that cottagey look about it. It's a great sort of purpley blue colour, and will fit in with some lovely colour systems if you want to. So do think about it, whether you've got an Australian native garden or whether you've got a cottage garden or whatever. Either as a climber, where it's very good, it's a medium-sized climber, grows 2 or 3 metres up and a bit more across, or as a lovely spillover ground cover plant. The name again is Hardenbergia, many varieties. This particular one, tell you how good it is, this is just a rubbish plant straight out of the bush. Every home has one of those horribly ugly areas around the garden or whatever, which is really challenging. Look at this. It's under the deck, but it could be under the house or whatever. You've got pillars standing up. It is really ugly. It's full of builders' rubble and all the rest. You've got a horrible area here where the water collects next to the path and it can't get away. What do you do about that? Just come and have a look at some of the mess. I mean, when the path went in, the builders have left concrete. There's remains up here of some archaeological thing. I presume it's the old pathway to the back of the house or something. So you've got real problems. Now, what do? Well, normally, the standard thing would be to run trellis along here and sort of screen that off. And you get an area that sort of looks disciplined, but boring. Now, the lady who owns this house has 4 kids under 10. And those kids have all got a good imagination. What if we build under here a real fairyland? Delightful little plants, mounds, interesting bits of foliage, texture, all that. That's exactly what we're going to do. Well, the area now is pretty thoroughly prepared. All the rubble's gone, the weeds are gone, and we've dug over under there. But we've got this problem here with the path being put in. It's formed a dam, and you've got all of this water here. Now, what I want to do is run a couple of lines of agricultural pipe under the path. I'll show you how you do it. So we're going to put 2 of them. We'll put the first one, say, about here. Now, I've dug a little hole either side of the path. Believe it or not, I'm going to dig under the path with the garden hose. You can turn it on, please, Terry. Flat to the boards. Now, that's on a very fine jet. What we're going to do, try not to make too much of a mess, We'll use the hose to dig a hole right through under the path and come out the other side. A little bit messy job. The more clayey your soil, the longer and the more messy this is. The other way you can do this, by the way, is try and put a crowbar through underneath. The problem is this soil is compacted, it's almost like concrete. The chances of us getting a crowbar through are not very good. Well, the hole is well and truly through now. Bit of a, hey, Tamara, thanks Terry. Bit of an awful job in clay soil. It's a much better job here in Perth or something where it's nice and sandy. Now, we're running an ag pipe through. Ask someone what size of ag pipe you need, then never believe them, double it. This is a 4-inch or 100mm pipe. Anyone would tell you you don't need anything near that size here. Well, remember, it doesn't cost much to buy a slightly bigger size of pipe, but it is a nuisance having to dig another hole. Now, all I'm going to do is leave this like that, just looped. We now fill this with a bit of blue metal and some very porous soil on top, and that'll drain away forever. The rainwater will percolate through the soil, down through the blue metal, and through the little slots, the holes in the agricultural pipe, and then it will flow away. Now, we've put in one of these Hardy Pope irrigation kits. They're really fun to, I don't know if you've ever done one, but they're more fun than Meccano set. We just hook it off the tap, then it goes into a filter, pipe goes under the path, so we've had 3 holes under the path, along through the ground here, up behind one of the pylons, and then just around the bottom of the deck. Now, all of the little spinners, they're little micro spinner, there's a bit in there that spins. We've put them down, upside down, on one of these risers, well, except now it's a faller, I suppose. The reason is to keep the water away from the wood on the deck. You don't really want to get that wet because it might rot. So having made the holes with the little hole punch that they give you, it's simply a matter of screwing this in. Now, this is the last one to go in, so it's now the moment of truth. All right, Terry, give me a chance to get away. Let's see if it works. Oh, that's great. To do this whole area, we've only put in 4, 5, 6 spray heads. That's all you need. Just back it off a little bit. The beautiful thing about these is that they don't waste a lot of water. It's very good. Now, that's fine. So whatever we put there is going to go. You better turn it off now or we'll be working in ooze. That's great. Well, now, we've barrowed in around about 2 tons of soil. Now, the area that we're working on here is about 10 metres, or if you like, a bit over 30 feet, by about 5 metres, or a bit over 15 feet. So that's how far 2 tons of soil went. The last step before we try a dry placement of the plants is to just sculpt the soil. Now, we could leave it boring and level, but I'm not going to do that. I want some mountains and valleys and hills and things. Well, now for the really tough bit. What plants grow under a south-facing deck? Well, believe it or not, there's quite a few. Most of them are simply indoor plants. Plants that take low light, but also I've tried to pick ones with interesting foliage, but which also will tolerate dry conditions, because if you forget to put the sprinklers on, it'll be very dry there. Now, the first one is this. This is a mother-in-law's tongue plant, but it's a variegated variety. There's a bit of white in the leaf. It'll cheer up that dark area, as will this dwarf variety of mother-in-law's tongue. Silver lamium will spread as a ground cover under there and add sparkles to the area. Fuchsias towards the front to add a little bit of colour and happiness. Now, you might only think of Madonna lily or spathiphyllums as plants for indoors, but areas Sydney, Perth and north, these things are quite good in the right spot, shady, outdoors. The brachycombs, the native blue daisies, are pretty good. Streptocarpus, related to African violets, they'll be marvellous under there and lovely sort of flower colours that just add life. Bird's nest ferns are beaut. You've got variegated ardisias there. You may never have heard of them, but again, they add a bit of life and sparkle. And since we're sort of out on the terrace at the back there, this is a terrace fern. Well, that might look a bit cluttered and silly at the moment, but once we get those plants in the ground, hopefully they'll work. The next step, I'm going to put a few tree ferns at the front here, just mainly to dress it up a bit. There's nothing worse than just staring at sort of a, the bare underskirt of a house. Well, it's now the next day. We ran out of light to finish the job yesterday. So this is the end result. I must say I'm rather pleased with it. Now, what we've done, just to recap, towards the outside are plants that grow outdoors but, well, don't mind a bit of shade. As you extend further inwards, we come more towards the indoor plants. We've used a lot of variegated plants, and I think there's quite a symphony of creamy whites and silvers. We used no yellow variegations here at all. We just tried to stick to the whites. And particularly when you look at the mother-in-law's tongues, we've got the tall ones, then we grade down to the short ones, and then on to the variegated liriopes. Just very curious foliage effects. Now, the beaut thing with a garden like this is that, sure, it looks reasonably good in the daylight. Remember, this is only just planted. We'll thicken up a lot yet. But it brings up the question of garden lighting. You get some very interesting effects if you start to light a garden like this. It would look wonderful at night with some lights up under the deck. But one last thing I forgot. Remember, I did mention that the lady who lives here has 4 children under 10. And at the moment, there's nothing in this garden for them. But there could be. There are many outstanding climbers that really you should think about using around the house because they can do things that almost no other plant can do. For instance, this one here. This is a thunbergia. Its common name is black-eyed Susan, although there's a lot of plants called black-eyed Susan. This one has yellow-orange flowers with a very, very dark black throat. Now, it's a very tough plant. Through most areas of middle Australia, it'll happily grow. Look, this one is just growing as a roadside weed. And look at it, marvellous little thing, flowering its head off. But there are many others within this family, all of which, of course, are called thunbergias. This one is the sky flower, and it's probably the most sought after, or in horticultural terms, the most choice of the lot. It does have almost a sky blue colour to the flower. Beautiful flowers, flowers for many, many months of the year. It's excellent in Sydney and Perth. When you get to the slightly cooler areas like Melbourne, you need to have it in a very warm position, otherwise you might lose it. But it does grow in areas like Melbourne. But when you get north to areas like Cairns, it goes berserk, and you'll see this often escaped into rainforest, doing considerable damage, grown right up over the top of rainforest trees. You'll notice also we've got a white form of it here as well. There's just a couple of different plants here mixed, and notice the white one is a larger size of flower than the blue one. Now, another thunbergia of interest is this one. This is sort of a shrubby climber. It's a new one, may not be available very much around Australia yet. You'll have to hunt for it. Thunbergia natalensis. I assume it means comes from Natal or something like that. But there you are. There are many within this group that are interesting. Nearly all of them are climbers. They have a slight weedy potential, so keep an eye on them. But, gee, they're long flowering and very pretty. That family name again for them, or genus, is Thunbergia. Do you live in a flat or a home unit? Well, sooner or later, most people in Australia do. And when they do, they get one of these disaster areas. This is called a balcony, and it's a thing that hangs off the side of the area where you live, and it's usually full of dead and dying plants. Now just have a look at some of these here. This is the classic gaggle of failed indoor plants, the maidenhair that's no longer good enough to live inside, the old philodendron that's crook, and look at this poor old Dracaena. It really is on the way out. The tragedy of these is that the owners believed if they shoved them out here, somehow they might recover. But with the huge change in temperatures out here, hot and cold and wind, these things are only going to get worse. It's a real disaster. One little ray of hope, a lovely container here. And this has a rose bush growing in it. Now, the basic idea of the rose bush is very sound. North is out there, it's a sunny spot, and something with a bit of height in it is a great idea. But it's not growing well. And the reason is up above us. There's a lot of overhang here. A tall plant like that is not going to get any sun back in there, so the rose is quite ill. Speaking of quite ill, these petunias look dreadful, but they've looked great for months. It's just simply time to throw them out and replace them. Now, that cyclamen is doing quite well. Interestingly, it's a good plant to choose for here. It'll do better on the balcony than it would indoors, but the pot looks ratty. There's a lavender, fantastic choice. They just love it like this in an elevated, sunny, airy position. The azalea, I don't know so much about. The extremes of temperature here will never suit this plant. And as for the balsam, well, it really is just too rugged an environment for it. It's brittle sort of a plant. It's never going to do any good. So there are a lot of problems on this balcony. As you can see, you've got a fantastic view of Melbourne city skyline here. And yet the plants form a sort of a barrier right across that view, so you really don't feel like you can enjoy it. There's a gaggle of ugly colours of pots, greens and blacks and oranges. It just doesn't work. So frankly, nearly all of this has got to go. Righty-ho, well, that's the last of them. The question is now, what do we do? We need something to frame the view. I think that those containers that we had there, the white ones, look fantastic. We may even get some more of them. But something like the roses that'll do rather better. I wonder what we could use. Yeah, this is just the thing. Now, maybe it's not what you'd choose, a rubbishy old privet, but in fact it's perfect. We'll take the shade here up high, and around the base, just to give us a splash of colour, the gorgeous Primula obconica. Now, we want something for the corner. I know, the lavender that we just took out can come back in a white pot right there. Now, that works really well, and that, by the way, is the French lavender, which flowers for long periods, so it's the best choice. But now we need something really along the front, something to sort of embellish the view, but not shut it off. Maybe a low hedge. Now, that works particularly well, a low box hedge, both sides here, little gap in the middle. Talking about gaps, there is something wrong with this foreground. We really need to fix that. Now that fills the bill really nicely. We brought that cyclamen that we had back in, added a few mates, chopped them up. They're in that old terracotta container. We painted it white, it looks fantastic. Added a little bronze statue, and the whole area works particularly well. Now, do you remember what it looks like originally? Well, this is the original effect. It was dreadful, dominated by containers that were so ugly. And now, all of the containers are white. They don't dominate at all. They fit into the balcony, yet they still look very attractive. There's a few other things you should note. The containers all now are fairly large, which means low maintenance. It's not going to be keeping this looking fairly good over a long period. Now, we've had this done professionally by the city gardener in Melbourne. You're looking at a cost here of around about $1,100. If you did it yourself, you'd save approximately $250, so it would cost around about $850. You would replace some of these colourful flowering things seasonally, but what you've got now in a very nicely designed apartment with a beautiful view, the absolutely perfect balcony. Are you looking for a plant that is really practical, won't drop dead, will do a job that you can be absolutely certain of absolutely every time? Well, there's probably no plant like that, but one that comes very close to it is the potato vine. Now, there's a number of different potato vines. This is probably the best of the lot. This is the white potato vine, or sometimes potato creeper. Superb white flowers, and it produces them for many, many months of the year. And boy, is this plant hardy. You can just shove it growing over a low fence or something, or a paling fence is fine. Put it on it and forget about it. It usually doesn't get into trouble. It's not a massively over-vigorous climber, and it flowers almost all year. Now, that's the white potato creeper, which is Solanum jasminoides. In other words, it's supposed to look a bit like a jasmine, which, yeah, it does. But there's also a number of blue ones, and probably the best of all of the blue ones is this one, Solanum seaforthianum, if you like, the blue potato creeper. Again, here it is hanging over a fence. Now, it's not quite as dense a grower as the white flowering one, and probably not quite as hardy, but beautiful blue flowers followed by very attractive berries which can colour up through red to a burgundy, almost black colour. It's a very, very pretty plant. So that one, Solanum seaforthianum, one of the blue potato creepers. But to return to this one, gee, it's good. In freezing cold areas, we're in Burrowang here at the moment. In Burrowang, this thing laughs at the freezing weather. It stays green all year. It flowers almost all year. There's even a variegated leaf form of it. This is all things to all people. Now that you have your garden completed, you come to the really fun part, where you add that wonderful little flourish, or maybe a labour-saving device, or just a very special plant. If you've got a garden, you've got to be able to move around, barrow things, walk around in the rain, all the rest of it. And that means a garden path. Can be just grass, can be gravel like this. But normally when we have a garden path, we're going to lay bricks or concrete or something that's hard work and very expensive. Well, believe it or not, there is one type of path that looks sensational, costs next to nothing, and you can put down in maybe half an hour. I'll show you what it is. This is a eucalyptus mulch path. Now, I think you'd agree it looks pretty good, and it is the easiest path that you will ever put in. What do you do? Well, basically just look at where the goat tracks form in the garden. You buy this eucalyptus mulch from your local landscape supply company, and maybe twice a year you just sprinkle a little bit of it over and just sort of rake it level or whatever. What does it cost? Well, half a yard would do, that's half a cubic yard or half a cubic metre if you like, would do the average backyard path. And that's going to cost you around about $20. Fantastic looking path. It doesn't have to be bent like this one, it can be straight or whatever. The product again, eucalyptus mulch. This is it. It's just basically a waste product that they get from sawmills ground up and so on of the middle bits of gum trees. Eucalyptus mulch, about $20 for the average backyard. You might remember this is the front yard makeover that we looked at earlier. And part of the reason that the plants are growing so well is that we installed an irrigation system. Now you can buy a kit, or you can do like we did, you can actually buy the bits yourself. But before you do buy them, there's some measurements that you need to take. Well, what I was doing here is measuring the flow rate of the water from the tap. Now we've lost a little bit here, but it went over the sides. We've roughly filled the bucket. And believe it or not, it took only about 8 seconds to fill it. So we've got fantastic water pressure. We should have. It's a new housing estate. Now, how do you work it out? Well, we got 10 litres in roughly 8 seconds. Now, if you multiply that out, that means you get something like about 75 litres in a minute. So you write that down. Now, the next thing you do is pace out the size of your garden, because we've got to go down to the irrigation shop or a local nursery or someone that specialises in what we need. We're going to need to do a map, do a rough drawing of your garden, more or less to scale, so that we can work out just how many bits and pieces we'll need. Once you've completed drawing your plan, it's simply a matter of marking on it roughly where the sprinkler heads will go. They're spaced approximately every 2 metres. We're going to use flexible black poly pipe, and then there'll be little thin bits of pipe that'll come up called risers, and on top of those, tiny little micro sprays. But we've got a number of bits of pipe. We've got some thin stuff and some thicker stuff. Now, basically, the thicker your pipe is, at least for the mains, the more water pressure you can deliver to the spray heads, and therefore the more spray heads you can have. In other words, the more of the garden you can cover. But one of the tricks is you should lay this out in the sun prior to doing anything at all, because once it warms up, it becomes far more flexible. If you don't do this, it'll probably coil up back on you like a Holland blind or something. To install the poly pipe, just rake back your mulch and lay the pipe where it is to go. Then try to just bend the pipe gently in most areas where you need a curve. Where you need a sharp bend, obviously you use one of these joints, and of course don't forget to clamp both sides of the joint. The risers are screwed directly into the pipe that you've laid on the ground, and they're spaced about every 2 metres, so maybe get a 6-foot garden stake and measure them out. Now, the rigid risers are just screwed in like that after you make a hole in your bit of pipe. Now, it doesn't matter if you make a mistake, because on these jet stakes that we use to hold them up, there's actually a bit there which is just a little plug, and I'll show you how that works. If you make a mistake, you simply push that into the hole you've made with your thumb, like that, and it's now closed. So we'll make a new hole here with the little tool provided. Then we get our rigid riser. It's simply pushed into that and then screwed. Once it's tight, I'll now move this. Put your stake in, and this is simply clicked into place. And we're ready to put the little nozzle on after we've flushed out the system. Once the system has been flushed out, it's time to install your nozzles. Now, there are different sorts of nozzles that spray out at different angles and all the rest of it. You'd need to talk to your irrigation expert as to which ones you would use. But when you install them, make sure you don't spray water onto the house. The irrigation pipe is simply tucked under your garden mulch, and you're close to having the job done. Now, a couple of other things. You will need a filtration device. And one little tip, install it back to front. It has an arrow on it which way the water should flow through it. When you install it the correct way, all the muck finishes up on the inside of this thing. If you run it the wrong way, the muck finishes up on the outside, and it's much easier to clean. So install it back to front. Nothing will go wrong. Then you're also going to need, in the line here, a thing called a backflow prevention valve. The theory being that you could somehow, if the pressure failed in the water, get some muck coming from the irrigation system back into the town water supply. Now, that's never happened in Australia. Nonetheless, they're worried about it, so you'll need one of these. Also, it's a very good idea to change your one tap that you used to have to two, so that you've got one tap leading to the irrigation system and a second one spare for the garden hose. Now, what did our sort of Lego equipment cost? Well, it was $150 for this whole front yard, and that includes the backflow prevention valve. For another $150, you can get one of these marvellous electronic controllers, and this just works off a 9-volt battery, so it's a pretty good idea. Now, there's lots of brands around. Which ones do you run with? Well, many of them are good. Toro is good and so on, but we used one called PPI, which many of the professionals recommend, and it is worth talking to your local expert down at the irrigation shop on this sort of thing. Let's have a bit of fun. This is the moment I've been waiting for. You have to turn on very slowly now and just see what happens. If you're looking for something with really interesting foliage to use in the garden, you could do a lot worse than to grow one of these. This is Mahonia lameriifolia. Now, there are other Mahonias around. The normal one sold is Mahonia bealii, but it's not bad. But this is the best of the lot, Mahonia lameriifolia. One downside, and it's significant, this is very, very, very prickly. More prickly by far than a rose bush. So be warned. But if you want something a little bit in the garden where you're not going to walk all the time, with stunning foliage and magnificent flowers through winter, this particular thing, it's a Mahonia, and it's Mahonia lameriifolia. What is the crowning glory of any garden? It's a fish pond. Would you like one? Well, you can put them in. They're not all that difficult, but there's a few mistakes you can make. Firstly, where do you position the pond? If you put it in a high spot like some people do, it doesn't look natural, and a pond that doesn't look natural, well, doesn't belong in a garden. This looks like a reasonably good position to build a pond. It's lowish in the garden, but there's one important factor. If the pond is near the house, it's very important to go inside where you are now and have a look out through the window to make sure we're putting it in the right position so you can see it inside. There's no point in hiding one's pond, as it were, under a bushel. Now, it is time to rake up the mulch and get to work. Well, it's now time to start digging the pond. Now, you must always assume when you're digging a hole in the garden that the coaxial cable to Sydney, Melbourne or Perth runs through here, and that there's gas lines and everything else, because if you forget about that for a moment, you'll spend a couple of days waiting for it to be repaired. Well, it's not the easiest digging, but then it never is. You always strike rocks and lumps of wood, all the rest of it. And you go with the flow. Like, I'll make some areas deeper than others. It'll be good for the fish and all the rest of it. But the main reason is, of course, it'll look attractive, and I couldn't dig there anyway because there's something in the way. Once you've completed the pond shape, it's time to add the liner. We've used a Colonial Superspan synthetic rubber liner. It's guaranteed for 20 years and comes in widths of up to 15 metres, so you should have no problems keeping your fish wet. You need a liner because no matter how thick the concrete pond is, it will almost always leak. Now you're probably wondering how we know how to calculate this piece of rubber. Well, you basically work out the floor plan of your pond. In this case, it's about 6 foot by 5 foot. You've got to add 2 foot up on each side for depth and about a foot overlap. So that's 3 foot here and 3 foot there, 6 feet all round. So 5 foot by 6 foot comes about 12 foot by 11 feet, and that's it. Now, if you're wondering what this disaster is here, I knew about that. I knew that I was going to do a funny little bit, and we've got another bit of rubber to go in there, which will join on with a special type of adhesive tape. To join 2 pieces together, first sand the liner to allow a key for the adhesive. As always, the need for cleanliness is essential, and the joint may be improved with a little extra pressure. The tape is supplied with the liner, and remember, when all else fails, read the instructions. It's critical that the top of the pond is level. One of the best ways to do this is to hammer in a network of pegs, then to use a spirit level to make sure that they're absolutely spot on. Try to keep the concrete coming regularly and lay it about 2 inches thick all over the liner. Then you should put down some reinforcing wire. We've used ordinary chook wire, and then another layer of perhaps another 2 inches of concrete. Now, if you've concreted level with the pegs, there'll be no problems. Just trim the liner, and then the next step is to put some rocks in place. Now, not lots of ratty little rocks that will always look silly and unnatural. We want to make it look natural. By the way, also, make sure you get a mate to give you a bit of a hand with something like this, because I don't want to finish up in hospital with a hernia or a broken leg or something. Now, you could wait till the concrete was dry. We're going to sit them in while it's still wet and then pack some concrete under it. Matter of personal choice. Once the rocks are positioned, it's time to complete the surface of the pond. Now, we used a mixture of cement, sand, red bricky sand, fly ash, which looks like black sand, and blue metal dust. At the end of the process, sprinkle on a little extra fly ash and perhaps some more red bricky sand to get a natural but somewhat mottled effect. Well, this is the job just about done. What I've done in the final coat here is I've sprinkled some more fly ash, the black sand if you like, and the red bricky sand into the surface and pushed this rock mould that we've previously used in making a fake rock. Now, don't worry if some of those blotches of colour look a little bit unsubtle. Once we wash this down at the end, they'll become quite subtle and will look like rock. All we've got to do now is let this dry slowly. Keep it moist, at least for a week, because if concrete dries quickly, it becomes very weak and brittle. It's a week since we did it. The pond is basically set now, and it's time to get ready to plant it and put the fish in. Now, before you do anything, the first thing you do is check your water. Now, it's been raining a bit, plus we've, of course, kept a little bit of water on it just to make sure the cement dried or concrete dried slowly. Now, if this water were neutral, which it won't be, this will go a green colour, but if it's alkaline, it might go just a little bit mauve. Oh, look at that. That is deep, deep purple, which means that the alkalinity in here is probably above 10, which means that anything I put in that would die. But there is a solution to this problem. And the solution to that problem is vinegar. Drain the pool, paint it with vinegar, wait about 24 hours, then fill it with water. If it's still very alkaline from all the lime coming out of the concrete, the simple answer to that is to add a little bit of hydrochloric acid to some water in a bucket, and then gently incorporate that into the water in the pool, and that should make it neutral. The next step is to put soil around the pond. We have to sit it a bit high because we struck a storm water pipe down below it. Take great care not to pile great amounts of soil around the base of any existing plants, because that, frankly, could kill them. Once you've done that with your sculpturing and so on, it's time to try some placements of plants. The idea is to spill them over the edges of the pond so that they soften the look of it. It's a question of trial and error. Some of the placings you'll love, others you'll hate. Well, I think I've got it pretty right now. The last step, and this is perhaps the most enjoyable bit of the planting, is just putting them in the ground. Now, I'm going to plant almost every plant, if I can get them out of the pot, almost every plant on its side. The idea is leaning right into the pool. celebrate our new pond, we've got a delightful summer shower. And this is very relaxing, just sitting here looking at that out your window. Now, you could be doing the same thing if you want to shove one of these in the garden. Just note, though, tinker with your pH, the acidity in that, for about a week before you put your fish or your plants in, and make sure it is absolutely neutral. Other than that, enjoy. If you've always wanted a hedge at the front of your place but really couldn't be bothered spending all that time and energy developing it, then what about something like this? It might look like a living hedge, but in fact it's not. It is living though. What it is a plant called Muehlenbeckia. It's a climber, and they've grown it over some of this sort of bird wire, budgie wire, and just trimmed it. It grows very quickly. You don't have to wait years and years. You could grow something like this in a matter of months, and the effect is really good. The plant again, Muehlenbeckia. In virtually all the other segments in this video, I've done the work with these hands. But fortunately, in this particular one, I had a moment off. It was just a flight of fantasy. So tell me some of your problems, Jill.
Well, Don, I just haven't got this right. And that's why I've written to you.
That's driving you nuts, is it? What's wrong with it?
I just need help. It's all over the place. I feel there's not continuity. I think I'm too messy.
And yet there's lovely elements here. There's some really lovely bits. All right, tell me about your fantasies. What would you like?
I would like something that was, I think, with some elements of surprise, easy to maintain, not too, inexpensive, and possibly, I don't know, green or something. I'm not sure.
All right, well, look, just for people at home, it's about 15 feet by 20 feet, so in other words, sort of 5 metres by maybe about 6 or 7 metres. And stunning paving, which you wouldn't change. That's a lot of money to change. But there's some really simple things we can do here. Now, firstly, we're looking on a concrete wall there. I think that's rather awful. What I do is get rid of that plant on it, right? Now then, square the wall up. See how it slopes down? It says that's somebody's little back of a garage.
Yes.
Run a piece of wood level across the top at the back.
Right.
And repaint it. I know you've probably painted this recently. That colour stands out a little bit much for me. I'd pick a harmonic off your bricks, a softer, like a light terracotta-y colour with a bit of pink and that in it, just to get it to recede a bit.
Yeah, and that means that would go up.
Exactly.
That, right.
Now, we prune a little bit of the camellia, just so you can see through it, and we paint on the back wall there a scene. That path winds on, goes down past some more silver birches, into the distance
Oh, like
to a
a
lake.
trompe.
Trompe.
Oh, I'd love to do
but
that.
we have that going off in the distance. So as you look from inside your house, we see off into the distance down to a lake or whatever it is you want, a summer house, whatever the view is, right?
Right.
The bit in the middle, you've got all these bricks in a circle saying, here's something really special. And then you've got that in the middle. Throw that away. What about you take the little bricks out in the centre there, plant a weeping standard camellia to pick up the theme of camellia, so a beautiful standard camellia, grafted one.
Right.
Put a table around it, a circular table, and some chairs around that, and you've got something really gorgeous.
Fabulous.
Now wait for this. Then there'll be another one of those tables in the distance in the parklands as you go off there, painted on the trompe-l'oeil. Another one of those ones.
Right.
So it all starts to come together.
Yeah.
Right, same as you've got the silver birches going off into the distance. A couple more, you could have a Sasanqua camellia there, some little miniature camellias and so on. Now there's a couple of problems here, and they're really simple to fix. There's some really bad bits. That bit in the corner, I don't like that. I don't like this corner. They sort of say we've got lots of bits of sheets of fibro. What you do is reinstate the pergola over the top and put 4 corner posts going up. They can be fake, nice turn posts to hold it up, and that corner one hides that hideous corner and breaks up this one here.
Oh, fantastic.
And then you could have a little fernery in there or whatever it is you want. If you're going to use this sort of wire thing, get another one or two and do more of them. And don't forget then, if you wanted to, you could have another one or two in the distance in the trompe-l'oeil.
Oh.
Now here's a real trick for you. See the shed? The guttering, even from there, looks very gross and big. So it says the shed's only 5 feet from the house.
Yep.
We'll put a much thinner profile guttering, so it makes it look as if it's more in the distance, and then we'll slope it. We'll fake it. We'll slope the guttering down to create the feeling as if that building is shrinking into the distance.
Oh, that's just magic.
Tilt the guttering off, so again it's working with your trompe-l'oeil. Okay?
Right, right.
And basically, you know, that's it working. This chair here, I'd put some element around that. I mean, you can always pick that, clean the paling fence off, get rid of the ivy, maybe paint that same colour as you've got here if you want to. But I'd put something to define that seat. It could be two smallish, not pencil pines, but two narrow conifers, or...
Yeah, to sort of give that
or an arch.
Italian-y
You
look.
could put an archway over it, that sort of thing, but make that a proper focal point. It stops at ground level, bring it up over fence height.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, this thing is going to work and work well. But you repaint the back of the house, get rid of this green, paint all this in the one colour, some harmonics, but keep them muted so that the whole thing you see is that marvellous...
Lake, I think, don't you?
A lake in the distance.
Absolutely wonderful.
Right. Oh, and on this wall, once we put all those conifers, in the middle of that wall, so when you look out from in there, a nice water feature there. I mean, it could be the proverbial lion vomiting into a dish or whatever, but something there with a bit of light, because you can put a pump inside the laundry or whatever that is.
Right.
And it's all fixed. It's all lovely.
Thank you.
You happy?
Oh, very. Thank you. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is what it looks like when you've got it all right. Now, what do we got here? You've got 2 rows of silver birches which frame the entranceway to these 2 houses which join. Look at the stunning multiple plantings of the silver birches in that wonderful bone colour. And note that the house picks up exactly the same colour. And it goes further. The iron lacework has those spots in it which are very similar to the spots on the trunks of the silver birches. This really is as good a use of colour in the garden as you are ever likely to see. And note one thing about it. It's the simplest use of colour you will ever see. Well, so much for the basics. By now I'm sure you are all master gardeners and you're saying, yes, I can do that. And you're probably thinking, well, what about something a bit adventurous? Something more than just a little bit different? Well, sit back and cop this. What's your problem?
Don, it's fairly obvious what my problem is. I have a dreadful backyard. It's,
You don't know what to do with it?
I don't know what to do with it, Don. I want something interesting, but something easy to look after. And I thought, well, they say Don Burke knows what he's talking about. I'll find out.
All right. Well, look, this has probably never occurred to you. You're an actor. Oh, that's occurred to you.
That has occurred to me. Occurs to me every now and then when I get a job.
But gardening is theatre. It really is. I mean, if you come to think...
Explain yourself, Don.
Well, it's very... Well, you see, look, excuse me for a minute.
Just talk amongst yourselves.
When you come to think of it, gardening is always somebody's fantasy. If you think of when we looked at Biddulph Grange in England, all those different sets. When you think of Martha Schwartz from America, when she did, well, all of those very strange ideas of hers, and back home in Australia with people like Germano Capaldo and others who just have very strange fantasies. Even the so-called nice and pretty gardens are still somebody's pretty fantasy, a fantasy about being beautiful and so on. So what if we did this yard in a challenging way? There's only ever been about 3 or 4 gardens ever designed. Let's create the 5th. Oh, sorry, have I...
Oh, Don, no, sorry, I was just a bit bored there. Having a look at everyone else's garden. They're as bad as mine.
Can I do something weird with your backyard?
Yeah, how weird?
Well, when you look, about the only thing that stands out in this backyard, apart from your good self, is the corrugated iron, the old corrugated iron. What if we fenced the whole yard in corrugated iron? We'll put up an old structure in the middle over these bricks here that sort of looks like an old broken down barn.
Don, it's supposed to look better than it looks. Not worse.
But we'll put corrugated iron on that. Then maybe over here some piles of junk, old farm junk, maybe bits of tractors or something like that. Grow nasturtiums over that, maybe a peppercorn.
I like nasturtiums.
Do you?
Yeah,
We've got
nasturtiums, daisies, nasturtiums, geraniums, colour and movement.
But the idea is we'll set this up like a theatrical set, as if it was a bit from an old farm back in the 1930s during the Depression. Times are tough.
It's not very big, Don.
No, but it'll look big.
Very small farm.
Could you live with it? Could you live with it?
Should I trust him? Yeah, I'll trust him.
All right. Well, so we'll... All right. Well, look, I'll tell you what we do.
As long as it looks better than it does now.
No guarantees. But we'll try something. If no one else has ever tried a new garden, we'll try it.
Sounds good.
Well, in we came with shovels and rakes and turf and, well, loads of old timber and, of all things, some rusty galvanised iron.
Well, I don't know, Don. I spent weeks getting rid of galvanised iron when I moved in, and now it's all come back. Like boomerang galvanised iron. You sure this is going to look good?
By crikey, by the time we've finished, Dad and Dave Rudd will be wandering around the backyard picking up bits of firewood for the fireplace down beneath the shed. you think of your brand new clothesline?
I love it. It looks like it's been there forever.
It does, doesn't it?
I like it better than the Hills hoist. You can angle it. I love the pegs.
Yes, wooden pegs for detail, and old wood for the actual
Yeah, it's
structures.
fantastic.
Speaking of structures, cowshed.
Well, Don, I love it. I wasn't entirely convinced when you said I was having this in my backyard, but it's great. Somewhere cool and shady.
Yes,
Sit out of the summer sun.
exactly right. And it looks again like it could have been here a while.
Looks like it's been here forever.
And I got you some pig swill urns.
Yeah, where are these from?
Originally from Goulburn Jail.
Yeah, do they have pigs at Goulburn Jail? Thought they have prisoners.
Well, there you are. So now all we've got to do, we've got all this set out.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a peg in there too. All we've got to do now is get some plants to put them around the garden.
Yeah? Yeah, well, just don't make a mess. It's the first time my garden's looked tidy.
I'll do my
Since
best.
I've had it.
Now, what do you think? Oregano?
Yeah, why not?
Oregon?
You reckon oregano?
Yes, I think so.
All right, Don. Well, Don, this is my dog kennel, but it doesn't really go with the backyard anymore.
Do you read foot rot flaps?
Yeah.
You do? Oh, you're going to love the idea we've got. We found your dog a 44-gallon drum, which we've... There you go.
Oh, it's
Trimmed back.
wonderful. She'll love it.
Class, don't you reckon, in
Oh,
style?
it's absolutely fantastic. Looks like it's been here forever, Don.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with it, actually. It's turned out...
Have
actually,
a nice cuppa.
Thank you. Better than I thought.
It looks fantastic.
Yeah? Oh,
Piece
wonderful.
of boiled fruitcake.
Very civilised, isn't it? This will
Yep.
prove to be, I think, quite a practical area. And I love your little bottle collection up
The
there.
bottle collection's gorgeous. There's some old bit of machinery,
Oh,
the old
yeah.
roll of wire, which is always on country fences.
Yes, yes. What we've gone with, as you can probably see, is mostly orange, yellow and white.
Yep.
So we've got... And they're all those remnant plants that you got around the old farmhouses. So
Yeah.
things like nasturtiums and watsonias, which are a terrible weed in Western Australia and don't grow them there.
Right.
But wonderful here, pyrostige, the old
Yep.
orange
They're
trumpet
gorgeous.
creepers.
And they
lots-
flower in winter, don't they?
Exactly right.
And all these geraniums along here, they're all different scented ones.
They
Lime.
are. And you've got rose, you've got lemon, you've got peppermint, and they'll spread all out over the path. So as you walk along, you'll crush the odd bits of them, which will prune them.
And smell fantastic.
It'll waft up and engulf you as you walk
A
along
garden
here.
of sensual delights.
Exactly, exactly right.
I love that cartwheel or plough wheel.
Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? It's still got a lot of the old gearing and
Bits and pieces
drive rods and everything
attached to
attached. Yeah, I don't know what this was. It's some sort of an old bowl or something that, if it could talk...
Perfect for strawberries.
Exactly perfect for
Whatever.
strawberries. That's obviously from milk, and this is, of course, the guts out of an
Yeah.
old copper.
I've always wanted a washing line like this.
Well, the thing is with this, apart from looking, you know, the part...
Incredibly practical.
Yes, it's over one side. It doesn't
Yep.
block the whole centre of your yard and that.
There's lots of room.
And down the back, an old plum tree, a flowering plum down the back, which should be nice.
And a passion fruit vine that will eventually grow over this a bit.
Yeah, yeah. And the whole idea of the nasturtiums and all that is that they sort of spread through those old wheels and everything, and gradually this garden will just look like the remains of an old garden, perhaps around an old homestead somewhere.
Well, you've got to live in the city. It's the nicest garden to have. I love it.
One of the most fashionable types of garden in Australia today is the one that is topiarised, where they have balls on sticks and hedges and all that. When you put a lot of that sort of stuff together, it really does look nice. And this is a particularly good example. But look at this, a rather fascinating example of carrying that trimming out into the street. But it's not quite what you think. Well, what do you think of it? Isn't it wonderful? Effectively a freestanding panel of living plant material. It's an evergreen alder, or at least it's 4 evergreen alders trimmed into a panel, and it reinforces that sculptured theme of the garden. Maybe there's something, a variant on this theme that you could do maybe in your own street and add that little bit of life to the streetscape. Building a garden is one of the most satisfying things that you will ever do. But there's one real problem. How do you start? Well, have a look at this place. This is an interesting, but I suppose fairly ordinary sort of a backyard. And brutally, it's one that doesn't work very well. We've got a lot of grey pavers here, the odd plant. Well, you might notice it's a very clean look to the yard. Series of steps sort of arcing their way around here. A little bit of lawn, paper bark, And you'll notice everything is this very soft blue colour, which is quite interesting. But native plants a bit scruffy, the whole thing just doesn't work. Now, we want to do something that's really bright and fun because we've got a young family here and we want to involve the entire family in the job. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. We'll use this bluish colour in the house as is, but most of the garden goes. Before we could begin, there was some tidying up work to do. Firstly, there were a few lumps of wood poking out here and there that needed to be removed. And also the existing plantings. They're Australian native plants and they simply didn't work with the pale blue walls, so most of those plants simply had to go. The new plantings consist mostly of very brightly coloured succulent type plants, and the first one to go in was a lovely bright pink frangipani. The garden edges were not quite in the right position, so at least on one side they had to be removed. And the next thing is to remove some of the grass so that we can install the new garden edge in between planes flying over the top, that is. Well, this is the big moment, kids. You actually get to paint Mum and Dad's house. It's going to be good?
Yeah.
All right, two littlies, Callum and Jasmine, you go down and start painting those sort of ochre-y bits around the windows. Stick inside the masking tape, OK? Off you go. Lachlan, do you want to do the zigzag bits on the gate that'll pick up the blue there?
Okay.
Righto. And you, and what about you do those nice vertical lines around the trellis?
Okay.
Go for it. It's going to be fun. Well, we've got a lot of brightly coloured plants either already in or still to go. Now, most of what we've put in already are things like bougainvilleas, and of course we've shoved in a whole lot of these mother-in-law's tongues. Now, along the front we've got these really gaudy calanchoes. But the colours will work at the end, trust me. And now we get to the best bit of the whole story, and that is using these superb Mexican pots. Now, if you've looked around at the nursery, these are the cutting edge. These are the really fashionable pots that are around at the moment, and we're going to use a number of them in this landscape. And the thing I'm going to put in it is one of these. This is an agave Victoria Regini. Now, you need to be very careful because this particular plant is very, very prickly. I've already cut the pot away. I only get one chance of putting it into this tub, which is already filled with potting mix. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Would you like some fruit?
Oh, thank you. Well, what do you think of the whole job? Do you like it?
Oh, I think it's wonderful.
What do you think of all the bright colours?
I love them. I love them.
I notice
love
you're
the
not
pergola.
averse to it. Yes, yes, it's sort of orange and pink. And what do you think, Jasmine?
It's lovely.
What do you think of Jasmine's job of painting around your windows in the garage?
I think she's done a very good job. Look
Thank
at
you.
that. It's marvellous. I love the colour. I
All right.
love the colour.
What do you think of the pots?
They're beautiful. What are they made from?
They're actually sort of terracotta pots from Mexico, and they're just those lovely earthy colours, but the blues and that pick up all your blues and so on. They're the most fashionable sort of pots at the moment.
Oh, there you are, Jasmine. We're in fashion.
Hey, Jasmine, I've got some
They're
bad
lovely.
news, some really bad news for you. What's the bunny's name?
Splodge.
Splotch.
Splodge.
Splodge doesn't come out here anymore. Splodge has to stay around the back now. Is that all right?
Yeah.
New grass, Jasmine. New grass.
You kids will be able to wreck this and everything. It's going to be fantastic.
No more holes.
Well, there you are. It is quite a... Do you remember what it looked like?
Yes, it was
Yeah.
pale.
This morning?
Pale blue with lots of natives.
And now it's how it should be.
I think it's wonderful. Look at the colour. Look at the colour.
I've got to admit that it gives me enormous joy actually doing a lot of these makeover jobs. So satisfying to see the job finished at the end. And I hope if you take on a task in your own home that you derive similar joy. But probably the greatest single moment of joy is when you come back and revisit a job some period later. This is the theatre garden that we did part of the way through the video, and now it really is looking wonderful. Linda, how do you feel about it?
Oh, Don, I just think it's fantastic. And you've come back in the middle of winter where there's not as much flowers, and it's still looking good. It looks good any time of the year.
Yeah.
The passion fruit vine that you put in is starting to grow. The pepperina trees getting really high. The chook looks like it's been here forever. Isn't it great?
And great.
And the whole garden blends in with the rest of the place, with the corrugated iron, the back shed there, in someone else's property. It's all part of it. Everyone that comes and visits thinks this garden's been here for years. Nobody actually thinks it's a landscape garden.
So no one's ever picked it as an artificial
people
job?
that saw it on television, but other people who come along say, they just think it's been here forever.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching the video. We had a great deal of fun making it. Oh, and don't forget, by the way, the little booklet that came with the video. It gives you all the background information that you need to know to do any of these sorts of things, so do use it. Oh, and don't forget also that every Friday night, 7:30, Channel 9 on Burke's Backyard, you'll get more of these sorts of ideas. Hooroo, everybody.